Before Motown, before disco, before a single drum machine ever hit the one, 10 singers walked into cheap studios with nothing but raw nerve and accidentally invented the sound the whole world would spend the next 70 years chasing. These weren't the artists who sang R&B. These were the ones who built it. Note by note, take by take, sometimes with only 15 minutes left on the studio clock. Welcome to R&B Groove Lore, where we dig up the real, verified stories behind the architects of rhythm and blues. Let's count them down. Number 10, Little Richard, Tutti Frutti, 1955. Before he was a legend, he was a dishwasher at a Greyhound bus station in Macon, Georgia, scrubbing pots he hated, muttering a nonsense chant just to survive the shift. That chant became a song. At Cosimo Matassa's tiny studio in New Orleans, producer Bumps Blackwell wasn't feeling the session at all. Nothing was landing. So they took a break at a bar called the Dewdrop Inn, and Richard sat down at the piano and let loose the real, unfiltered version of Tutti Frutti. Blackwell knew instantly, but the lyrics were far too raw for 1955 radio. With only minutes left on the clock, a local songwriter named Dorothy Labostri was pulled in to rewrite it on the spot. Rock to the east, to rock to the west, but she's the gal that I... Little Richard nailed the new version in 3 takes. That wild piano, that scream, that impossible energy. Critics still call it the actual sound of rock and roll being born. And it all came from a kitchen sink in Macon, Georgia. She almost drives me crazy. She knows how to love me. Number 9, Ruth Brown, Mama, He Treats Your Daughter Mean, 1953. Long before Aretha was crowned Queen of Soul, Ruth Brown was already known as Miss Rhythm. She was the reason a tiny label called Atlantic Records survived its first decade at all. Brown's run of hits in the early 50s was so massive, so consistent, that insiders started calling Atlantic the house that Ruth built. Her voice had a signature crack on the high notes, almost like it was breaking with emotion, a style Little Richard would later borrow for himself. Here's the part that stings. Atlantic never paid her fairly. She covered her own touring costs, her own recording costs, while the label she carried grew into an empire. When the hits dried up, she spent over a decade working ordinary jobs just to survive. Decades later, Ruth Brown fought back and won. She forced Atlantic to pay her real royalties and used that fight to help win back money for dozens of other forgotten R&B pioneers too. Number 8, Etta James, At Last, 1960. Before this song, Etta James was a scrappy doo-wop singer with a group called The Peaches, bouncing between labels and going nowhere fast. Then Chess Records signed her, and everything changed. Label boss Leonard Chess had a bold idea. He wanted to turn this raw R&B belter into a sophisticated ballad singer who could cross straight into the pop mainstream, so he wrapped her voice in swirling strings, arranged by Riley Hampton, and had her cut a dusty old Glenn Miller tune nobody remembered anymore. That song was At Last. On release, it barely cracked the charts. It wasn't even a proper hit at the time. Nobody in that room in Chicago knew they'd just recorded what would become the most iconic wedding song in American history. Decades later, it's the song couples still walk down the aisle to. The song Beyoncé sang to open a presidential inaugural ball. Modest chart peak, permanent place in culture. The spell was cast. Number 7, Jackie Wilson, Higher and Higher, 1967. By the mid-60s, Mr. Excitement was fading. The hits had dried up for years, and everyone assumed his best days were behind him, until producer Carl Davis brought him to Chicago for one more shot. The session musicians weren't even from Chicago. They were Motown's own funk brothers, sneaking over from Detroit on weekends, getting paid in cash to moonlight on the side. That groove you hear? That's Motown's secret weapon, borrowed for a night. And I'll be at your side. Here's the twist nobody expects. Wilson first sang it soft, like a slow soul ballad. Carl Davis stopped him cold and said if he didn't attack it with real energy, Davis would sing it himself and sell millions without him. Wilson listened. He cut the entire lead vocal in a single take, full throttle, and delivered one of the most joyful records ever made. A song still closing out prom nights and end credits nearly 60 years later. Number 5. Otis Redding, Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay, 1967. That's all you got to do. Fresh off his legendary set at the Monterey Pop Festival, Redding rented a houseboat in Sausalito, California, just to rest. Sitting there, watching the ships roll in and out of the bay, a melody started forming in his head. He finished it in Memphis with Steve Cropper, recording the final vocal take on December 7, 1967. It was a totally different sound for him, softer, more vulnerable, almost like he was trying to change his whole style. 3 days later, Otis Redding boarded a small plane that crashed into an icy lake in Wisconsin. He was 26 years old. That famous whistling at the end of the song, it wasn't planned. He simply forgot his closing line and started whistling instead. Released weeks after his death, it became the first posthumous #1 single in American history. A ghost of a voice, forever sitting on that dock, watching the tide roll away. Number 4. Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come, 1964. I don't know what's up there. In 1963, Cooke and his band were turned away from a whites-only motel in Shreveport, Louisiana. Despite having a confirmed reservation, he refused to simply drive off and was arrested that same night. Around the same time, Cooke heard Bob Dylan's "Blowin' in the Wind" for the first time and felt something close to shame. A white folk singer had written the protest song Cooke felt he, as a black man living the struggle, should have written first. Yes, it is. Both moments collided into "A Change Is Gonna Come." When Cooke played it for his young protege Bobby Womack, Womack said it sounded like death itself. Cooke agreed, and chose never to perform the song live again for the rest of his life. It was released as a single on December 22, 1964, just 12 days after Sam Cooke was shot and killed at a motel in Los Angeles. It instantly became the unofficial anthem of the entire civil rights movement. A long time coming, but Number 3. James Brown, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, 1965. So good! So good! I got you! Brown had just spent over a year locked out of the studio in a bitter contract fight with his label. The moment it was resolved, he rushed his band into a tiny studio in Charlotte, North Carolina, on his way to a show, and cut this record in about an hour. I knew that I wouldn't. What happened inside that hour rewired popular music. Brown flipped the traditional R&B backbeat, pushing every instrument to slam down hard on the first beat of the bar instead of the second and fourth, a trick musicians later called playing on the one. Guitars, horns, even his own voice became percussion instruments. Nothing like it had ever been heard before. Critics call it, quite simply, the moment funk music was born inside rhythm and blues. It became Brown's first true pop crossover smash and earned him his very first Grammy Award. Proof that a genre-defining revolution can happen in 60 minutes flat. Number 2. Aretha Franklin, Respect, 1967. This song wasn't originally hers at all. Otis Redding wrote and released it first, back in 1965, as a man begging his woman for a little respect when he came home from work. Aretha had heard it on the radio, right after finally moving out of her father's house into her very first apartment alone. Something about it stuck with her. Working with her sisters Carolyn and Irma, she completely flipped the story, turning a man's quiet plea into a woman's fierce demand. Carolyn suggested spelling the word out letter by letter. The "sock it to me" ad-lib came straight from slang the sisters heard on their own block. Recorded in February 1967 at Atlantic Studios with the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, the track exploded into her very first #1 hit, and Otis Redding himself joked on stage that, "A girl just stole my song." It became far bigger than a hit record. It became the anthem of the civil rights movement and the feminist movement in the very same summer. One word, spelled out, changing everything. Number 1. Ray Charles, What I Say, 1959. This is the story of the night R&B accidentally became soul. Ray Charles and his band were playing a 4-hour contracted gig near Pittsburgh, and with about 12 minutes still left to fill, they had already played every single song they knew. So Charles just started jamming on his Wurlitzer electric piano, making it up as he went, telling his backup singers, the Raelettes, to simply repeat whatever sound he made. The crowd went wild. People swarmed the stage afterward, begging to know the title of a song that didn't even exist yet. Weeks later, he recorded it live in one take at Atlantic's New York studio with almost no overdubs. Just Ray, the band, and the Raelettes, moaning and calling back and forth exactly like that night on the road. Tell your mama, tell your pa, gonna send you back to Arkansas. Radio stations actually banned it for being too sexually charged. It didn't matter. What I Say became Ray Charles's first true pop crossover hit, and historians agree this was the exact moment gospel and blues finally fused into one sound the world would come to call soul. Every artist on this list, every artist who ever will be, owes something to the 12 minutes Ray Charles had to fill. I wanna know.